So what I want to discuss in today's episode is what I'm going to refer to as simple builds. When I say simple, I don't mean that it's in any way bad, it's just a bit more simplistic, and simplistic can be really good, which is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to look at MOCs that use some of the basic frames that are seen in various sets. Now that way nothing's too complex about the designs, we're just going to focus on really simple and easy ways of armoring up those prefab limb and torso pieces. And the specific prefab limb and torso pieces we'll be talking about today, this is going to include the Bionicle torso piece, as well as some of the prefab limb pieces that come on that. We'll also look at redoing the Toa Metru frame and the limbs that come on that as well. And again, we'll also look at the classic CCBS or Hero Factory style G2, whatever you want to refer to it as. We'll be looking at the bones and torso pieces seen in those kinds of sets as well. Now there's all sorts of sets that come with these sorts of specific prefab limb and torso pieces. So I'm hoping that no matter what your skill level or however many pieces or sets you might have access to in your own collection, the builds that I'm going to showcase today will be able to give you ideas, and it'll be something that's going to be very easy and manageable to build yourself. So hopefully it's going to be able to inspire you in some cool ways. Let's get started. Shubi4000 has built Morgara, Brother of Malum. So while it may look like this is a little bit more complex at first, when we look at it from behind, we can see that it is using an Bionicle torso piece, the same ones that came on the Toa Bionicle and a few other similar sets. And then for the most part, the limbs are basic prefab pieces, whether those are Bionicle or Hero Factory limb pieces. And I think that's actually what makes this so impressive, is how well armored each of those limb pieces are. Let's start off with the leg design here, so we can see the actual legs, not so much the armor on top, just the prefab limb leg piece that's under that. They're very similar legs to what we see on Vokama Hordika. But on the lower leg, we can see the use of this modified ball joint piece. Here it is on Bricklink. It's in dark bluish grey, and it's just here, and it's what's used to attach that CCBS piece on top of that dark red Vokama leg piece. And man, that looks way better when there's some armor on top of it. And look, you could say the exact same thing for the upper leg design too. Put some armor on the top and the back, and suddenly it looks way better. And I think that's the play with all of these different MOCs that we're going to be talking about today. You just got to find ways of taking that prefab limb piece, armoring it up, and making sure it looks good. I think it also does help though that the arms and the legs use very similar armor pieces. That consistency between the two, I think that really helps. The fact that the textures on these pieces are basically identical makes the design look really clean and unified. If these pieces were a little bit too different with very different textures, it might start to just look a little bit too messy. So there's a nice balance that you got to find there, and here it's just right. Now, on a different note, the character idea here is quite fun. I like the idea of this being the brother of Malum, which was this specific LEGO set and this specific character. I'm not sure why, but I just really like that idea. I think it's because I remember when I was a kid and I would play with like Transformers and Bionicles, I would often do that. I'd be like, oh, this is the brother of that character, because either you'd buy the set twice, or like with Transformers, you often had the exact same character but with a different color scheme or something. So yeah, I just like that idea in general, and I think it opens up some interesting doors. You know, is it very similar to actual siblings in the real world? Do they look very similar to the other character and potentially even use pieces that mirror the set that you're making the character's brother or sister off of? Or do they look nothing alike, but it's like, no, they're still related, you know? It's a cool concept, and there's a lot of creative possibilities within that. So yeah, I like that they did that here. Let's move on to the next MOC. It's by Laurantis Finality, and this is Tyrant. Here we can see the Metro torso and limb pieces in action. It's the same frame that we would see on sets like Mattel Metro, for example. Now, I love the way that they've actually upgraded this torso design here by allowing the shoulders to have just a little bit more movement and posability to them, because on the original set, the arms were linked in by a gear function, and so it made the limbs a little bit more rigid, but this frees it up in a cool way. So how it's done, the axle's sticking out of the torso, they've put a ball joint on that specific axle. They may have even tied those axles down so it's not actually limited by that gear function here. It's hard to say, but I imagine that's what they've done. On those ball joints that are sticking out of the body, there is this hand connector piece, and then that hand connector piece is then linked onto the actual arm itself. So because of that ball joint there, you should be able to move it a little bit more freely, and it's not sort of stuck in one direction. I love that. So little changes like that sort of actually improve upon the old design. Not that there was anything wrong with the old design, but this updates it a little bit more. That's a good play. It's also a pleasure to see a cool custom mask here in action. I think a good looking mask can always do so much for a Bionicle character, and this was a very good choice as well. We can also see a breakdown here of some of the system pieces that were used to add detail onto the waist. If you ignore the transclear pieces that have been used here to show this actually breaking down, you can more or less see how this has been assembled, and once you finish that little sub-model, you then attach that onto the waist, and suddenly that whole waist is just vastly improved. I think it's a really great design, and it's nice to know that a small little thing like that, using a few different system pieces, transforms that entire torso. That's lovely. Bob the Doctor 27 has revamped halimari. So now we're going back to that classic Bionicle torso design that was seen on the original set, halimari. Now, the original set didn't actually really have much torso armor here. It was just sort of that blank torso piece, which it was okay, I guess, but it was certainly a choice to do that. But the decision here to add a dark blue Nuva armor piece here, I think that's very smart, because I think that chest armor now suddenly ties in the legs and the arms into that torso, and we've got a much more unified build here. The torso almost looked a little bit alien with the rest of the limbs on the original set, although I still really liked that halimari set. That was such a cool character, despite the lime limb pieces that would always break, or the connectors, you know what I'm referring to. It's a classic Bionicle problem. But still, the improvement here was a very good choice. So hey, if you're planning on upgrading a set that uses the classic torso and limb pieces, making decisions like this is a good idea. Ask yourself, what was missing on the original design, and how can you add a couple little pieces or whatever stuff to actually fix some of those original problems? I also adore how the lower legs here have been upgraded, adding that little dark blue boat stud on the very top there. Small detail, but a very welcome one. We also can see some dark blue armor pieces linked together on the shins here. Now that's really cool. This is the same piece that's used on the upper torso of the Toa Metru, but in dark blue of course. But yeah, just attaching two of them together like that and linking them at the very bottom, that's really nice. What an effective way of upgrading that Anika limb armor piece, and it's only using a few pieces. So I love that, and I love this whole mock as well, a very nice revamp of the character. So we're halfway through, but we'll be right back after this quick message. A company called We Love What You Build has released this awesome new periodic table of LEGO colors, and it's awesome. I'm finding it helpful as a tool to differentiate LEGO colors. I mean, for example, there's so many shades of blue these days, and many of them look pretty similar. So it's helpful to have both the Bricklink color name and the Lego.com color name as well, all in one place. You know, if I ever need to look up colors for Bricklink, if I'm buying specific parts for a mock, it's just a lot easier. Especially since Lego.com and Bricklink have totally different names for colors. I mean, how is regular green considered dark green on Lego.com? Come on, Lego. Anyway, it's a helpful tool, and I think it looks really nice too. If you're thinking of getting one, head over to WLWYB.com or check the link in the description below and use the code Cossy10 and you'll get 10% off your purchase of the periodic table of LEGO colors. Have fun. The next mock now is by Infrared MTMNC, and this is avongu. On this one now we're going to move back to the traditional Metru torso, and yeah, we can see some awesome inclusions here that I think really enhance this whole design. On the very top of the Metru torso we can see two red pieces, and these look great. They make for some very snazzy looking shoulder pads, and I think it is actually the perfect way of upgrading that Metru torso, which I would argue is not as easy a piece to upgrade. So yeah, it's a brilliant design, but what exactly are these pieces? Well, if we look at Jala in this set here, we can see that his red torso uses two different pieces. It's this piece, and then just below it, it's this piece as well. Now these two were used together so that there was a bit of a gear functionality on Jala. So this specific piece here, that is what is being used on those shoulder pads. It actually brings me a lot of joy seeing those Matoran body elements being used on a mock, because I feel like they're very underrated and very underused pieces. And that's just such a wonderful design. The other part of this body construction is also used here. It's on the arm, and when you partner it with those arm limb pieces, it makes for a good looking design and works well as armor. It's also cool to see some of those Technic panel pieces working very well as leg armor down the bottom on the legs. So another great way of using those stock standard limbs, but armoring them up in some very aesthetically pleasing ways. Plus this mock also has a really cool axe design. You gotta love a good axe design. Now we go over to a mock by Ron Falkers, and this is Lithuni Toa of Light. So everything about this is fairly similar to what we discussed before. Nice armor pieces are being applied to the limbs and the torso. It looks good, it works well, and it's a great way of making them just that little bit more interesting. But I wanted to use this mock to stress the importance of a really good color scheme, because sometimes a cool color combo can make a mock way more interesting. So if you are deliberately using a more simplistic look, again, nothing wrong with that simplistic look, playing with those prefab torsos and limb pieces, maybe you might want to vary the design a little bit by adding a unique mask, like this beautiful trans yellow cow, or adding a unique color scheme. I think this color scheme here of silver, silver, dark green, and Keyed Orange is a lovely color combo, and it really makes this MOC stand out for me. It kind of reminds me of Umbra, which was a set I really, really liked, so maybe I'm just liking it because it's hitting me in the nostalgia and all that, but still, it's a lovely color combination, and sometimes that's all you need to make a MOC look cool. Last MOC now, this is by Studzone, and this is Ranu the Leader. So this here is the first build that uses the CCBS torso and leg pieces, much like you see on the classic G2 Bionicle sets like Gully here, for example. So how can we decorate those standard pieces, those CCBS bones, and make them just a little bit more interesting? Well, I think the answer is tires. You can see that on all the limbs here. You just got to squeeze those tires onto those limb pieces, and suddenly you end up with a really clean, beautiful looking result. It's that simple. And then on the upper limbs here, we can see CCBS armor shells, and that's it. Honestly, CCBS armor shells look so good on their own. You really don't need to do much else to make that look any more pretty than it already does. The torso itself uses a Chima torso piece with that great Zamisphere in the middle, and then it's been beautifully covered up here with some dark tan cloth pieces, which was seen on the Ultra Build Ray set. I think that's a wonderful look. Sometimes, again, all you need is a good cloth piece to cover up the armor, and it's going to look good. That really is all you need to do. I think this is such a great example of how minimal and simple a build can look, but it can still really shine in some fantastic ways. So yeah, it's great to see how that standard frame, it's not a hindrance. If you pay attention to having unified textures, armoring it up in some pretty looking ways, and maybe adding something a little bit more exciting and different, like a cool color scheme or some interesting cloth, you'll end up with a good result, much like we see on this MOC here. So that's been a few different simple builds there. Hopefully you've got a bit of inspiration for your own future MOCs. If you'd like to see more from the builders that I've featured in today's episode, be sure to check the links in the description below, and you can check out some of their other work on their social media accounts. Additionally, in the description below is the submission email, so if you've got MOCs that you'd like to see on the show, you can submit them through that email. And in the description below are also links to my own social media, so you can check out what I've got going on over there. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Happy building, and bye for now.